But the first one I'm actually going to start on is actually how do I grow my business without external finance? And I think for a lot of people, this is a really interesting topic because a lot of people do want to start their own business. A lot of people do also want to bring in external finance to pay for everything because it's expensive. But actually, where do you start and that kind of thing? It's not an easy one to solve. So I'm going to kind of write on the board, go through some questions. But if you've got any questions or comments, please comment and they should pop up on the screen as well. So as a basic kind of question, how do I fund my business? So anyone that's kind of followed this stream for a while kind of knows that there's two main kind of elements to it. One is the consultancy, and that's something I've done since I first set up. So that is a traditional kind of freelancer model where people hire me for my time and I do stuff and I kind of get paid for it. What I'm going to talk about today is almost a roadmap angle, because actually what this is more relevant or more, yeah, I guess more relevant to what I class as a proper business that has upfront costs, where actually when you work for yourself and you do consultancy or copywriting or marketing or whichever, PR, actually with just a laptop you can kind of, that's it. So actually there aren't the same challenges that you have when you make a physical product. So what I'm going to talk about now is the roadmap MBA, but it could be true if you make pens or specialist baby cots or cars or whichever. So the first thing to look at in terms of, when you're looking to grow a business and do you bring in external finance, that kind of thing, is for one, why? Why do you need it? Whenever you take out a loan or whichever, obviously there's interest repayments, there's a lot of strings that come with it that actually, if you don't really need the money, although it might take you longer to do, it'll be cheaper because you won't have debt repayments, but likewise it takes some of the pressure off. And one of the decisions that I decided to make was that, yes, I had some savings that I kind of wanted to reinvest. But actually, a lot of people also go out to get third-party kind of finance. It could be a venture capital firm, it could be on the stock market, it could be lots of different ways that you can do it. But often when you do that, you actually end up giving up some form of kind of control or impact or equity in the business that I didn't want to do. So the way that I do it, what's called bootstrap it. So I really kind of take my time, but I basically earn money from other people doing consultancy and doing that kind of thing, and basically reinvest that back in. And what that allows me to do is over time build a business that I can actually start to accelerate and grow, but without losing control, without having any debt repayments or that kind of thing. And again, the more successful I can make the consultancy and the more cash I can generate, the more I can actually invest that back in to grow a bigger, better, faster kind of business. So what I'm going to do is kind of draw this out for you. I'm going to get my black pen. And just if you've got any questions, please feel free to kind of reach out and actually just ask. And I'm always kind of happy to help. So what we have there on the axes is basically time and money. What I'm going to do is simplify this. The time scale will vary for everyone's different business, but actually it's really interesting to kind of, know where you sit, I guess, and just, hopefully when I verbally talk through this, hopefully it'll make sense. But if you've got any questions, kind of let me know. So the first one, actually, when you first set up, there's always a point where you start with a certain amount of cash, and basically that amount of cash will go down until the point where you're earning more than you're making. Does that make sense? So what will often happen with most businesses is that you start with savings, and actually even if you do raise external finance, this is still true. So you start with a certain amount of cash, then over time it goes down because you'll actually have overheads and costs and that kind of thing. And the hope is that your revenue can overtake that. So actually over time, your cash can go back up again. And as long as you get past the kind of break-even point, that should be able to keep going forever to really create a successful long-term business. It's not as easy as that, but that's just what I wanted to kind of talk about. In terms of kind of overhead and things that are really important to kind of consider, basically, if you work for yourself, or even if you don't and you have a factory or a coffee shop or a facility, you have overheads, which are basically kind of fixed, or at least for this example, I'm going to say fixed. And what's really important when you're kind of bootstrapping it and doing it how I do, is that if that is a certain amount of cost per month, when you first kind of set up, there's always a balance of your income will, it takes a while to actually start generating cash and actually starting to get money into the business. So at the start, you probably have very little income, and that's why your cash balance is going down. which is true, and that is just kind of get used to that. I think for anyone, you want at least 6 months worth of cash in the bank to see you from first starting up to actually hopefully being able to wash your face and actually break even, if that makes sense. The more you have, the better. When I first set up, I actually had 24 months. So I had 2 years worth of cash in the bank to kind of see me through that process. Luckily, I was able to, well, actually, I've just turned 2 years, but I was able to kind of do it quicker and actually reinvest the money. But the point is, it's really kind of getting to that point. And then over time, as you start to get customers and stuff, in terms of your revenue or your income, it should go up. And what's really interesting in the way that I choose to run the business is that, yes, actually, I got a quick win at the start, and most people actually do. So when you first start your business, you'll probably actually get one project or a quick win, which will almost help you get started, find a bit more confidence, and really kind of get going on what you're doing. But then actually, when you kind of evolve your offer and learn from different customers and grow, a lot of people do say that you'll get your first customer really quickly, but the second one might take a little bit longer. But then after that, it should really take off, and it's just being able to kind of live through that process. But what's really interesting, just in terms of external finance, for me, what I did was I used my own kind of savings to kind of give me the buffer to get to the break-even point before I went off. Some people actually borrow money from other people, and then what that'll probably do is give you a bigger cash amount at the start to be able to grow the business. But actually, you give up more stuff in kind of return. And then where I kind of am now, which is quite cool, is that when you start a business, you often have some big upfront costs. So that could be your branding, buying a building, it could be buying machinery, it could be staff and labour costs, I guess, but that's, kind of more of a fixed cost. But the point is, a lot of businesses have really big upfront costs at the start. But for instance, if you spend £20,000 on a website, next year you don't have to spend the same money on the same website. So what's quite interesting is that if you can almost survive to the break-even point, so actually get to the point where you start with that amount of money, you've got a lot of costs, so your cash is going down, but actually you're starting to get customers, you're starting to get revenue. So that's the blue. So you're starting to get customers. The trick is just getting to the point where actually you break even and you survive, which is here. Where I think this is now quite interesting is where kind of I am with the business, is that because I won't have right now, but I will have this tax year paid off all of the kind of expensive stuff that kind of comes at the start, which is brand, studio, websites, that kind of thing. Basically, I don't have to do that next year. So say if that costs £50,000 in my first kind of year, next year in year 2, I actually don't have to spend that same money on the same stuff because I already have it. I've invested in assets which I can then use again and again on different kind of stuff. So one of the things that I think is then quite interesting is that all that same money is, providing my revenue stays the same, it gives me the potential to reinvest more in marketing, PR, advertising, user experiences, products, launching new products, that kind of thing. That actually, if you can afford, when you bootstrap a business, to get to the break-even point, providing you can keep going, you should actually be able to accelerate the business a lot quicker because you have much lower overheads. And I think one of the things that's really interesting to kind of talk about is that for any business, it doesn't matter who you are and what you do, the lower you can keep your overhead, which for me is what I pay myself, which actually at the moment isn't much because I'm trying to build and reinvest back in. But I do pay for this office. I have various subscriptions for Adobe and Restream and different things that I kind of pay. But for any business, the lower you can keep the overhead, both the longer that gives you to survive with the cash that you have when you start before you need to break even, but also the more profitable your business will be forever. And because of the difference between the money that you earn and what you spend, that is all stuff that you can accelerate. And basically the bigger the difference between the two, and I think overheads is actually the main kind of driver, the more you can invest back in and the faster you can accelerate. So I'm actually quite excited for the next kind of year, 2 years, because with the roadmap, I've now done the hard bit. The hardest bit is actually that for any business, it's getting to break even, it's covering all the big costs, getting proof of concept, getting the studio set up and almost the idea out there with people, that actually it's then how you go through the turning point to really kind of take it to the next level and keep accelerating it. But I just wanted to talk about how I fund the business myself. Basically, I work really hard and get paid to do stuff by other people. I keep my overheads low, so I don't really kind of pay myself, and I'm trying to be quite modest. And then I just keep reinvesting back in. That timeline will take longer if you do it yourself. So basically, this for someone with external finance could be a year, could be 2 years, but that same business model, if you fund it yourself, could easily be double that. But you retain control, you retain equity, you don't have the debt repayments, and it's a different way to do it. That if you can, personally, I would recommend it just because it's what I choose to do. But actually, I just thought it was interesting to kind of talk about. And if you've got any comments or questions or anything, please comment and it will show up on the screen. And I'd love to kind of interact and stuff as well.